Hey there, Dane Cash here. Before you go any further, I'm going to take a quick moment of your time to say that if you've ever considered becoming an Escape Collective member, now is a great time to do it. It's Tour de France season, and you won't want to miss our members-only shows over the next few weeks. You also won't want to hit a paywall when you're trying to read our racing analysis or our deep dives into tech. And on top of that, you can get your first month for just $1 right now. Head on over to escapecollective.com/TDF and sign up.
Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of the Geek Warning podcast. I'm Dave Rome, and this episode is a series of mini interviews with a handful of exhibitors from the recent Spoken Bike Show, formerly known as the Handmade Bicycle Show Australia. With no specific show plan or theme, the interviews span topics from bike fit to painting to hiding brake hoses in novel ways and even chain waxing. Within, you'll find discussions with the creators behind Feather Cycles, Woods Bicycle Company, Curve Cycling, along with a few interesting conversations, such as with Silka's founder Josh Poertner, Bike Fit extraordinaire Stewart Morton, and event co-founder Nathan Lorcan. A lot of what's discussed overlaps with and dives even deeper into the bikes already covered in my galleries on escapecollective.com. Our bonus episodes exist as a thank you to our members that make all of our content possible. If you're not a member, then you will get just a taste of what this episode has to offer. And so with that, let's get started. All right, I'm sitting down with Ricky Feather of Feather Cycles. Not an Australian accent. You've come probably the furthest of anyone here. So all the way from York, UK, steel builder. Been doing it a while under your own name, Feather Cycles, where you do custom brazed frames. But you've just launched another brand. Can you tell me about Weekender?
So essentially, I built myself a winter bike, TIG welded, a couple of years ago. That was an all-road bike, really, and I wanted a bike that I could kind of ride through winter with mud guards, but then in summer sort of put bigger tires on and do a bit of gravel on it. And it just turned out that I just loved the bike so much. It was kind of my go-to bike, really, for that first full year of having it. Did a bunch of stuff on it, did some touring on it with, off-road, all bagged up, did a couple of winters on it. But then also found that, it was completely at home on the road as well. But then it wasn't kind of twitchy or, it feels racy on gravel, but it's a nice, well-balanced bike. A few people started mentioning that they really liked it. So it kind of just sparked this idea to start a bit of a new sort of sideline of more off the shelf, a little bit more accessible, a bit more affordable bikes than the custom builds that I do.
So you changed your construction technique. You went from brazed to TIG welded because it's more efficient for you. What else? What other efficiencies have you earned there to bring that price point down?
So they'll be painted in batches as well. So that brings the price down quite a bit. I can also kind of get through frame builds a lot quicker because I can sort of, I can batch build chainstay sub-assemblies and I can cut all the seat tubes at the same time, etc. So I'll probably do 5 or 6 a month of those, as long as we can get the orders coming in. Just do, hopefully long term, my plan will be to build 5 or 6 of them a month and 1 custom feather a month, and try to kind of stick to only top end builds for the feathers. And the great thing about the Weekenders is we will have a range of four different options of frame as well. So it'll not just be the all-road frame, there'll be a gravel frame, there'll be a road frame. And it means that you can get a hell of a lot of bike for a lot less money. So you can build it up top end and you'll have this amazing build. You'll have a bit of extra cash to spend on components that you wouldn't necessarily have if you were buying a feather. So it's kind of just, it's a way of balancing things out and hopefully getting more people on bikes that I build.
And talk to me so Feather Cycles full custom bike. It's what's Weekender? Is Weekender still custom geometry or is there more stock sizing there?
So we have both. So with Weekender you can have stock we do have a range of sizes, but we will also be happy to build them made to measure as well. It's just an extra 200 quid. So it's not a great jump really. It's just for sort of like resetting the tools and that kind of thing. You've just got to change a few things and a few angles and that kind of thing if you're going custom. So just to sort of cover the costs essentially. There'll be no extra profit or anything in it for me, but it'll be just an extra option. So if you can get to town, you can come and get a bike fit done. We can cover that.
The bike you've got on display under the Weekender brand, it's all-road model. What are some features? Like how big of a tire can it fit? What are some of the design goals around that bike?
Yeah, so it'll fit up to a 35 with a mudguard. And without mudguards, it'll fit. It's actually got 40s in it at the minute, but looking at the clearance, it would actually get 42s in there. So you can run up to probably realistically a 42 mil tire, obviously depending on how wide your rim is. And then, I do two versions of the all-road bike. I do a normal version, which is the Omni, and then I do the Omni I as well, which is the integrated version. So you've got the option there. But as I say, I mean, like the great thing of that bike is it's just so versatile. I've even raced gravel on it, literally a gravel crit. So I've kind of it's done kind of everything. All of the kind of riding that I do, I've done on that bike. I've even done training rides in summer, fast chain gangs and that kind of thing.
Versatile.
It's real versatile, yeah. I mean, it's not as twitchy and as responsive as like your typical road bike would be, but it's not meant to be.
The bike that I actually photographed has your own name on it, Feather Cycles. It's the custom bike you brought. I think you said it was a customer in Edinburgh. Generous enough for you to bring it across the world before giving it to them. That paint on that bike is something pretty spectacular. It reminds me of like a tiger's eye gemstone, I think is what they're called. There's a lot of depth there. Can you just tell me again how you've made that paint?
Yeah, so I work with Jack Kingston. He's based about an hour from me in Hull, an hour away from me in Hull, and he is super experimental. It's really cool. Like if I have a bit of an idea or a customer has a bit of an idea, I kind of just give him a bit of a guideline most of the time. Unless we've got very specific sort of like lines that we want to mask to and that kind of thing. But if he's doing something like the bike that I've brought here, where it's a bit of an experimental job, I can really kind of trust him to get creative and try new techniques out and that kind of thing. And with this one, it was actually just the sort of pattern and the marbling effect was actually created just with like a silly string style paint from a craft shop. It's just acrylic. So he didn't just use the acrylic straight directly to the frame. He put it on the frame and he played around with a few things like paint thinners and stuff and like melted the paint down and then reapplied the silly string. So there's quite a lot of depth to it and there's quite a lot of like, there's quite a lot going on if you look closely. And when you get it in the sun, that kind of comes to life even more.
And then there's also some gold leaf details there for the branding. I mean, there's a lot to see. Yeah,
so we actually use a lot of metal leaf for the graphics on the bikes. And the reason for that is when we're doing some like quite a funky paint job that's got a lot of colours, either fades or different colours like masked up sort of like along the down tube. Metal leaves, specifically silver leaf, reflects light really well and it reflects completely differently to paint. Like paint tends to absorb the light, whereas the metal leaf is reflective. And so we use a lot of like foils and leaves in order to sort of like make the graphics stand out against wacky paint jobs. So it just kind of allows us to get the branding on there. People can see it and notice it, but still looks super classy as well.
Sure does. I mean, I'll use that moment to self-plug and tell you to go check out the photos on Escape Collective. So well, thank you. I think you've got a pretty long flight ahead of you first thing tomorrow morning. Have you run out of movies already, having just come with that flight just a few days ago?
I didn't actually watch any movies at all. I watched a few documentaries.
Good luck. And will you be at, is it Bespoke? What's the UK show? Is that on your calendar next, or you?
Yeah, I'm doing that in about 2 weeks' time. Yeah, so if you're in the UK and you're listening, I will be in Manchester in 2 weekends' time.
What will you be displaying there?
Actually displaying the same two bikes as I've got here. I've made a big decision. I normally take like 7 bikes, but so tiring and so stressful, and take 2 really nice bikes, and hopefully that'll have enough impact.
Thank you, Ricky. Feather Cycles and Weekender. What's the week? How can people find Weekender?
Weekender without the vowels. So it's WKNDR.cc. Obviously, feathercycles.cc as well.
Thank you. Josh, Woods Bicycle Company. You've got a few different bikes on display. You've got a pretty cool mountain bike. You've also got a Miami Vice style road bike, which I believe is your own that you've treated yourself to. Very nice bike. But I'm very keen to talk about how you're managing to fit the brake hoses through what's effectively a tapered 1 1/8 standard size steerer tube. So you and Baum are probably the only ones in the room doing this, where it's like a skinnier steerer tube and the hoses just miraculously disappear into it. You've had a bit of a journey to get here. Can you tell me when you first started to hide these hoses?
So we sort of started on this rabbit hole in 2022. So for the Handmade Bicycle Show, we wanted to integrate our cabling. So for us, that meant designing and trying to figure out the best way of doing a expander / plug that got bonded into the steerer tube. We have gone through a lot of different design work on this. So we've changed this, our shape, our style. Essentially, we've backflipped onto probably my original drawing that I did in 2022. And we're finally where we want to be. On this one here that we have here, I have got it printed in titanium. So
The insert, that is.
the insert, yes. A 3D printed titanium part that gets bonded into the steerer tube with a slot cut in the front of it, so that the fork that we get has a slot cut into the bottom of the steerer tube, which is essentially for a front brake cable would pop out of to go into your head tube. We actually have our rear brake that goes into that and then goes up the steerer tube and into the stem and bars, and that's how we're able to do the nice, clean, tapered head tube.
I was in the room with you in a sort of a staff room, I guess, at last year's show, and you had a bike of hidden hose, kind of using this similar design on display last year, but you told me I couldn't look inside of it because you were a little, dare I say, embarrassed by what you'd done to that point. Like, you knew where you were going with it, but it wasn't quite fully baked. And Darren had a plastic prototype of his design that he's since launched that he was showing you, and you were scratching your head being like, we're basically like, I've just spent like the last year of my life designing something that you've also designed, and we've landed on the same place. And you're like, wow, there's some very clever features here. So I think, like your final design sounds like it was inspired by Baum based on how you inject the resin through the plug, but otherwise, I guess you're taking slightly different paths beyond that. Am I on the right path at that?
We have taken inspiration in certain elements of that, like the injection in there. It seems to bond the insert to the steerer tube a lot better. Like, we were able to get more resin in there, so like to actually create that proper bond, and something that we were happy with. Yeah, Zach has been learning how to draw a lot at the moment as well, so we've been playing around with different things to really refine where we're wanting to go with this.
Zach being your brother who does the fabrication, and Josh, your everything else for the business. So I mean, tell me about the hose path. Can you explain it? Like, so you said the rear brake, let's go. It's come from the handlebar through the stem. Where is it going from there?
So it goes through a slot that is milled into the front of the steerer tube. So it will route down the steerer tube. The front brake goes directly down into the exit port, essentially down the caliper.
So it goes through the steerer tube, through the crown, through the fork leg, which is different to Baum's design because Baum is using I believe it's an MB fork off the top of my head, but his fork doesn't allow that path, so he has to take a different path. But yeah, so yours is straight through the fork, and then that rear brake pops out of that front brake hose hole, basically. Is it? Yeah. Have you done any testing around like whether there's any internal rubber associated with that?
Not yet. So with us getting to our point of this final design, this is now when we're going to actually go to testing, like full-on testing with this. We want it to be safe. We don't want to have any failures with this.
So what does that testing look like? I mean, there's some big expenses probably coming up, but what's involved? Like, where you're sending forks off? What are they doing? Where are they going?
Yep, we're going to send the forks off. Where we're actually going to send them at the moment, we're still trying to decide on that final, like who we go with. And what the testing looks like and what their recommendations are on that, because at the end of the day, we design and build frames. We don't design and build forks. This is not our expertise, like in the carbon side. So we'll be seeking a lot of guidance from that as well.
So since you've gone down this path, last year at MADE in the US, Columbus released their own solution, which kind of aims to achieve similar ideas where you can fit, was it Tritico, I think it is called? Yeah, it basically puts a integrated hose system through a 1 1/8 head tube. Did that give you pause to think about doing that? Like what was it about that system that you didn't want to just swap over to that? Because you do use Columbus tubing in some of your frames. So yeah, can you explain why you continued, I guess, this path, which is the harder path. So, yeah.
We definitely looked at using that fork. That was our ideal solution. I put a pause on everything we were doing with the plug for, I'd say, probably the best part of 6 to 9 months, because that was becoming an option. The biggest thing for us was accessibility. Columbus had said that they hadn't had a release date for it, like when it was going to be available to us, and we really wanted to just still display our latest bike at this show, and that led us into going back to the drawing board, and we've found a solution for how to do it now. If that we continue down this path in the future or use the Columbus fork, that's still to be decided.
And I guess when you say to be decided, will like the outcome of your testing perhaps be the, if the testing comes back and it's like, sorry guys, it's a failure, then at that point, I guess that's the Columbus path. And if it's a roaring success, then you might continue on this path, or are there other factors?
I think that we'll offer both options because of the different fork styling, the different rake, what each brand offers.
Sorry, I'm like, you probably know this off the top of your head. I'm struggling to remember, but the Columbus system requires its own stem, or is it not locked into that stem?
I believe they'd like you to use that stem. I haven't tested it. I haven't had a fork in my hand yet to be able to test it with another stem to see if it will work with that, but I don't see why it shouldn't. If it works with a different stem, that's a perfect solution.
But you were saying you will probably, moving forward, offer both systems to customers. And what is some of the advantages to your own system that you think might lead customers to choose that?
Accessibility of the parts. At this stage, not knowing how many forks we can get from Columbus would be a big factor. Knowing that we can get the forks that we're using now easily, it means that customers don't have to wait. Like, we don't have any delays in getting a bike out to a customer. That's probably the biggest thing. And
I guess to wrap up, I mean, like Woods Bicycle Company. I mean, Zach started. He's a BMX kid from way back. He's no longer that, but he still gets out on the little wheels from time to time. Still builds BMX bikes, but in recent years you've come to be known as almost like a drop bar company. Like, did some really cool road bikes a few years ago, and since expanded into gravel, and you've now even got full suspension mountain bikes. But where is the demand? Like, where do you think? Yeah, what's the most common woods bike that's out in the road? I won't say out in the woods, but yeah,
probably still to this date the BMXs have been our most popular bike. Offering a custom geometry BMX frame. close to that would be a road frame. So our Roadrunner frame or our Super Stock, they would be our next popular options. So we really would like to keep pushing the road stuff because we love the way that they look, the way we can design them and have a bit of fun with them, and really work with the customer on them.
Woods Bicycle Company, they're being made out near Byron Bay, so yeah, check them out. All right, I'm sitting down with the one that needs a little introduction, Josh Poertner, Silka. Josh, welcome to Australia. It's not your first time at the Handmade Bicycle Show, now spoken, but welcome back.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's really great to be here.
You've had a walk around the show. You've seen what the scene's up to. I mean, have you seen any bikes that have stood out to you that you sort of wish you could take for a spin, put in your suitcase?
Oh man, what strikes me, I've probably been here 3-4 times in the last 7-8 years. The level just keeps going up, and I love the way these guys and women push themselves. They push each other. I love like the sharing of, I think last time I was here, Bastion was 3D printing and Provo yet wasn't. And I don't know if Baum was printing it or not, but I just see the sharing of ideas, the sharing of technology. I love that everybody's friends, right? They're all sort of competitors in business, but end of the day, everybody's standing around drinking a beer and chatting with each other. But yeah, that Provo is so
the speciale.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. But, then you turn around and I think Darren Baum has 3 bikes in his booth. One with this insane orange matching Silka pump that I love. But the detail, right? And the welds and it's just beautiful. And then, I again turn the other way and Bastion's got that Archangel with the raised wing elements, and they're all like hand ground back, and you just think truly that's the problem with this is I don't know how anybody chooses. It's all it's so good. I think if I had the money and wanted to pull the trigger, I don't even know where I would start because I kind of want all of them.
It's a pretty impressive level. I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here, but I saw you quite a few years ago when I think Bastion was still fairly new. They hadn't launched yet, but you were at the show and you were talking to the guys. Would you say your investment in 3D printing and that side of the business that you've expanded into was perhaps inspired by what you saw in Australia?
Oh, absolutely. We had been looking at it for a while, thinking about it, and it was when I had first met them, and they were, I think, 1 or 2 years in. They had one machine, and they were so kind. He said, "Oh, you got to come to our place," and he brought me in and showed me around, and we talked equipment. And then even when we bought our first printer, I talked to them quite a lot about, and we actually ended up with almost the exact same machine that they had at the time. And and again, it's that lovely, kind of camaraderie. And, it was clear like we were going to go into printing and we would likely print for people who ultimately could be, quote unquote competitors to them. But, we're super close friends, here. And again, just love that about this handmade thing. You don't get this at the big bike show, the corporate bike show. You get a lot of superficial friendliness and a lot of, don't take my customer. And that's just not the vibe here.
Yeah, it's a great vibe here. Let's talk a bit about your 3D printing. You've got, was it 2 machines, 2 pretty sophisticated machines that are very, very efficient and able to sort of rip through stuff at probably 4-ish times the speed of what other more common machines do. What are you printing the most of?
So under Silka, we print a lot of cleats, mountain bike cleats, which continue to be pretty popular. We print a lot of, we call the Chisella. It's kind of an off the front of the stem computer mount. We print for 35 OEM brands. And so I print a lot of dropouts, a lot of flat mount dropouts, fork tips.
I'll just interject to say, wow.
Things like that. So yeah, it's fun. We're printing stems for a couple companies. I've got some crank arms that we print. A lot of things. Yeah, a lot of things. And I personally love it because it's varied, and I love work. We're constantly getting new projects. We're engineering them. We're fortunate, we're the only cycling company that runs the N-Topology development suite. And it's a really advanced software that can do, helps you with the infill lattice geometry. We can put gyroid in things, which not all softwares can do, but it also has this beautiful kind of iterative FEA process where, a customer, a bike builder can send me sort of the skin of their part. Like, it needs to look like this. And we can take that, put it in a model, begin to run stress analysis, and then the computer will actually iterate its way through, like thinning and controlling the wall thicknesses based on stress. And then once the part is stable, we can begin to infill it based on stress. And with that, we're able to take parts and typically get them lighter than you could otherwise have gotten them. But with 3D printing, it's this beautiful thing of, traditionally with CNC, you take a big block of aluminum or titanium, and the more you machine it, the more you're spending, right? $1 a minute, give or take, plus the tools to machine it. So the lighter you make it, the more expensive it is. With 3D printing, the cost is in the powder and the time on the machine. And so the lighter you make the part, actually the cheaper you're making the part. And so, from a complexity standpoint, the more complex the part, oftentimes the cheaper it becomes. And so, it really puts the impetus on the engineering side, which for me is the fun side. And I tell my customers, like, if you want to put 10,000 micro holes in something to make it lighter, that'll probably save you $1 or $2, which, is just not the case with any other manufacturing method. So
something I've heard you say is, and I might let you repeat it correctly, but something to do with 3D printing being the first technology that we've had as a human race that is ahead of human thought, in a sense. Like, I'll get you to say it properly. But
I really think about it, and I'm not the first to think of this, but you think of like all the machining and the CNC and the fabricating and welding. That's been us needing to do something and then having to develop some tweak to get there, right? I need to drill a smaller hole. Well, drill bits could only go so small, and now we have micro, and we got to spin them faster, and all this stuff. I need to machine down in that, that blind corner. I need some sort of articulated thing. With 3D printing, it can literally print anything. And we certainly see it with our customers, and we do some aerospace work as well with those customers. And, we're all stuck. We're not so much stuck. We're trained to design things that can be made. And certainly my generation is stuck there. I remember taking classes in college where, they would let you design something from scratch, and then everybody just got their head kicked in with like, you can't make that.
Design for manufacture.
Exactly. And, that's out the window with 3D printing. And so we really have to unlearn those things. But I think the solution is the younger generation. When we brought our first quad in, the guy at Renishaw was telling me, he said, you need to go out and find the youngest, like greenest, smartest kid you can find who's never made anything before, because that guy's going to come into your organization and completely change the way you think and do things. And so we did, and he was right. I mean, I look at some of the stuff that, even just the thought process of, like how things get laid up on the table, or some of the lasering strategies that they come up with. And I think, oh my God, I never would have thought of this. Or you'll see a plate come out and everything's all crooked and wonky and just looks completely like, who thought of that? And then when you really get into it, oh wow, all the holes and the threads are way more accurate when we print them at this weird angle than if we had just printed them how it seemed like you should print them. And so, yeah, with this, I think we're just now, a lot of what we print still looks like a tube welded to a tube, welded to another tube. And I'm very excited to see that next generation come in and throw that out the window and say, oh, here's this crazy thing that nobody's ever thought of before. Oh, and those two holes, yeah, that's where the flat mount brake goes.
So just to step back a little bit, you mentioned Quad and Renshaw. So Renshaw is the manufacturer of your machines. So 3D printers are kind of a market leader in that space. Quad referring to the number of lasers. Can you talk us through that tech and sort of like, I guess, compare it to, say, Bastion, one of the early movers, perhaps the first mover in the bicycle industry with the tech to have that in-house. Can you talk it through like versus, say, the machine they might be printing with and the advantages there?
We're really now at kind of a third generation of machine. And the first generation, at least with Renishaw, who, like you said, they're the market leader. They're a British company doing a ton of stuff in Formula One. And they're really metrology experts, like measurement, and amazing company. And the first generation machines were single laser. That's what they call DMLS, digital metal laser sintering. And, you had one laser and you basically wipe powder over a plate and you weld that powder to the plate with laser. And then you go down, more powder, and then you weld that powder to the stuff that was welded before, and you just keep growing in layers. And, that was good tech, but you had pretty small build envelopes because the laser focal length only really occurs perfectly in sort of a ring you think it's shooting from the ceiling, the roof of the machine down. You have a zone where it's perfect, and then you're either under or over focused outside of that. And it was slow. The lasers could only go so fast. They only had so much power. And then in the next generation machine, which is what Bastion's running, the lasers got stronger. They're steered by mirrors. The mirror steering got much, much quicker. And you could do a lot more clever things with the wobble of the laser. And so it gets super technical, but you think of essentially, if you're making something that looks like a tube, you laser the outside of the tube, the inside of the tube, and then you sort of do like a crosshatch wobble to connect the two. The new machines had probably 20 strategies to do that, which is really, really cool. And some of them have different strength properties or different times on laser so that you could make them faster. And then with this third generation machine, the one that we're using now, you have 4 lasers. And so each laser sort of has its own like quadrant of the build plate. So you have much higher percentage of on focus area in your plate, but you can also now make 4 parts at the same time. And so your build speeds went up 4 times. And now they just introduced a new thing that's pretty cool that actually, as you're wiping the powder, you can keep lasering either side and it will kind of chase the wiper. And so, in the original machines, you had to pause, wipe the powder, and then restart the lasers. And now you're beginning to move to wipe on the new powder as you're lasering some of the old, and then the lasers jump the wiper and keep going. And that's made them probably more like 4.5 times the speed. And so, so we have 2 machines, 2 quads, but that's the equivalent really of 8 or maybe even more machines of the original technology.
Hearing you speak about this, it makes me think, like, is this the favorite toy you have?
At the moment, probably yes. The thing with it, the other advantage to the machines we have now is you put titanium powder in, and in the old machines, you put it in the top, and what you don't use comes out the bottom, and you have to sieve it to kind of get any oversized particles out, and then you reintroduce it to the machine. These self-sieve and control their own powder. And so once you introduce powder, you never have to touch it again. You just keep adding, but you never really sieve and clean. And so like our machines, they can run 96 hours lights out. Fill it, put in a build, up to 96-hour build, walk away.
Busy period, you don't need someone on night shift to look after the machine.
Exactly. Yeah, or we can, you have a huge build, like when we did the Alex Dowsett hour record bike, we did the rear end for that bike, and those parts took 100% of the vertical build volume. And so I think we calculated it out. You just think you've got this build volume, and even what you're not lasering, you're still filling with powder. And so for the entire build volume to be full of powder was like $150,000 of powder to get that build done. And fortunately, you can, unlike CNC machining, you reuse that powder. It just cycles through the machine and gets used in the next build. But that was probably would have been a 120-hour build in a traditional machine, but was a 30-something hour build in our machine. So you start it, in the evening, and you come, 2 days later, you come back in the morning and it's done. Nobody had to babysit it during that time.
That's amazing. All right. Okay, if you're hearing this, then you're currently on the free feed of Geek Warning. And well, we did have to cut you off somewhere. To continue listening, you'll need to become a member of Escape Collective, where you'll get access to everything we do and feel a sense of warmth for supporting it. Head to escapecollective.com/member to sign up, and you'll be back listening to the full version of the episode in no time at all. See you soon.